The ground under the man's boots snapped and crackled as a deep cry echoed close by. Through the dense trees, he spotted a huge bear trapped by a metal wire snare, seemingly defenseless. He realized the urgency of the situation and took action that would forever alter his life. Would he emerge from this encounter unscathed? What would happen in the days after the confrontation between man and beast? Welcome to Wonderbot Animals. The bear's cry filled the air, a haunting mixture of suffering and fury. Johann aimed his rifle at the bear, yet his hands shook. The instinct to hunt battled with a newly kindled sense of compassion. Having spent years in the wilderness, Johann had grown tough. A bear represented food, income, and the line between providing for his family or facing scarcity. Normally, he would not hesitate. One accurate shot would suffice. But today, as he observed the bear fighting for survival, Johann experienced a discomforting twist of unease. The bear writhed intensely, its cries shaking the leaves. The snare sliced through skin and muscle, each movement causing intense pain, but the wire held firm like an unforgiving loop. The bear was immense, its stature like a behemoth of fur and might, capable of tearing Johann apart with one hit. Yet now its strength was futile, caught in desperation. The fear in the bear's eyes seemed eerily human, unsettling Johann. He lowered his weapon. He thought of Sarah, his wife, and their son, Lucas. Though his family's well-being hinged on his skills, every part of him resisted the idea of killing the bear. Then Johann had another realization. He could try to remove the snare. It was extremely dangerous, but not beyond possibility. The bear wouldn't recognize his intentions. One incorrect step, and he could be fatally wounded. However, ignoring the bear's plight and walking away was also a choice he found unbearable. Sarah's words resonated in his mind, reminding him of his goodness. Was he the same person, proud of a humane kill, or had he shifted closer to those setting these cruel snares out of greed? His resolve hardened. Deciding to shoot the bear would be logical and secure, but it felt cowardly. He stashed his rifle and took out his knife. Fear tingled through him, yet underneath, a rare determination blossomed. He cautiously moved closer. The bear's roar grew louder, filled with warnings of danger. Johann knelt by the trap's edge. The snare vibrated with tension. He needed tools, a plan, and, crucially, time. A plan slowly formed in Johann's mind, driven more by gut feeling than logic. The first challenge was creating a diversion. He stepped back, searching the ground. Sturdy branches from the previous winter's storms were scattered around. He chose a strong, twisted one. It wouldn't distract the bear for long, but it might grant him the moments he needed. Then he approached the snare again. He extended the branch toward the bear. It instantly reacted. The massive creature roared and made a move, but the chain remained secure. Before we continue, give this video a like to help it reach 15k likes, share, and subscribe to our channel. Repeatedly, he lured the branch closer until, with a significant swipe, the bear grasped it with its teeth. The bear's focus seemed to shift to the branch, albeit briefly. Now it was time for the spring. Johann examined the trap's mechanism. It was a highly effective lever and catch design, constructed with unyielding steel, which was outlawed in the state due to recent environmental concerns. He recalled that one of his old comrades and fellow outdoorsman, Richard, had been a vocal opponent of this specific trap, criticizing its role in causing indiscriminate injuries to various species in the region, highlighting the perils of excessive hunting. Even as an outdoorsman, one could show kindness toward the wildlife, and Richard exemplified that. He would not cause harm through carelessness, hence he cautioned Johann about this trap. Maybe there was a way to disable the lever, but how? His knife was ineffectual against that thickness. He muttered a curse softly. This was sheer folly. But then, from his desperation, emerged a spark of creativity. He broke off the slim, flexible end of a birch branch, Holding his breath, he approached the trap. The makeshift stick snapped on the mechanism. It bent until it almost broke. Suddenly, the lever moved. There was a metallic sound, and the bear reeled back swiftly. The trap was now open. For a brief moment, silence filled the air. The bear breathed heavily. Johann stood firmly, then gradually, the bear freed its wounded paw. The shock momentarily overtook the pain, and it tested its newfound liberty. The bear staggered a few hesitant steps, then stared at Johann with an intense look. The primal instinct of predator versus prey ignited in those eyes. The bear moved a step forward. Johann tensed, prepared to flee, but the bear's growl did not intensify. It merely took another unsure step backward. At that moment, Johann perceived more than mere raw, beastly anger. There was a fleeting glimpse of understanding, or perhaps acknowledgement. Whatever it was, it gave Johann a moment. He lowered his hand and retreated. The bear turned and staggered into the forest. Johann watched until it disappeared into the darkness. His relief soon turned into profound exhaustion. Johann leaned against a tree, feeling the rush of adrenaline. The situation could have ended in complete disaster. He pondered the driving force behind his actions. This was no longer driven by gain or necessity. It signified something more profound. A significant change seemed to be underway. He couldn't quite grasp it yet, but it felt more vital than any hunt for valuable furs. That trap should never have been placed there. The bear ambled a few more steps, then stumbled. It leaned against a large oak, taking labored breaths. Johann's relief was mingled with fresh concern. The bear was severely wounded. Despite his racing heart, Johann didn't back away. Every instinct urged him to leave, yet he remained rooted to the spot. He observed the bear, his body tight and ready to flee at any moment, yet the bear did not advance. Could the bear truly understand what Johann had done for it? Was it capable of feeling something similar to gratitude? The thought seemed absurd, perhaps even worthy of laughter. He cautiously moved one step back. The bear did not move. Taking another step, the usual roles of hunter and hunted seemed to blur. Feeling braver, he took several more steps, yet the bear continued to look at him, its head slightly bowed as if in exhaustion. Then, with unexpected quickness, the bear stood and, despite its wounds, turned away. It disappeared into the forest's depths. Suddenly, Johann found himself alone. The silence and vastness of the forest overwhelmed him after the intense encounter. He stumbled backward and then, turning around, he started to run. He didn't stop running until the forest opened up to a well-known dirt road leading back to the everyday world. The experience left him empty, yet filled with an unusual energy. He faced a side of himself that felt alien. Was his action brave, or had he just made things more complicated? He couldn't shake off the mix of emotions inside him. One thing was painfully evident. Johann had overstepped a boundary. His walk home felt anything but normal. The cheerful chirping of birds and the brightness of the sun seemed out of place. His hands shook slightly with each step. The image of the bear haunted him. Sarah welcomed him as she normally did, with a hug and a question about his day, but he found it hard to look at her. His voice sounded odd, even to himself. A sense of guilt twisted inside him. Internally, it felt even worse. His home, once a place of pride filled with hunting trophies, now seemed to suffocate him. The deer head on the wall, once a symbol of pride, now appeared to blame him. He looked away. Sarah's worry deepened as she watched him. She sensed this was about more than just a rough day outdoors. Disagreements that had been brewing for a while came to a head. She pointed out his recent aloofness and lack of focus, and she was right. Yet, he couldn't bring himself to share the truth with her. He could not convey the deep realization that hunting was not the noble act he had always believed it to be. His entire belief system was shaking under the intense gaze of a single bear. Wrapped in a cloud of relentless guilt, days passed. Then, suddenly, a compelling need to return to that spot in the woods took hold of him. The clearing still bore the marks of the past encounter. What he discovered ignited a fierce anger in him. The trap had been set again, right where it was before. The metal shone mockingly amidst the natural beauty of the forest. He had hoped his actions might make a difference, but this seemed like a scornful rejection of his compassion. A change came over him, hardening his resolve. This was no longer a matter of survival or providing for his family. A primal force, deeply rooted and wild, ignited within him, transforming a hunter's instinct into a guardian's fury. He vowed to track down the person responsible for the trap, and when he found them, it would not be a simple target they faced. The hunter had now become the prey. Johann redirected every skill he had, harnessing his understanding of the forest into a strategic advantage in a daunting stealth game. He installed several hidden cameras among the trees to capture any hint of motion in the areas plagued by traps. His expertise in tracking, previously used for hunting, was now aimed at detecting subtle traces of human presence, twisted twigs, disturbed moss patches, and the delicate remnants of a stranger's presence in his domain. Fueled by unwavering resolve, Johann collected damning evidence. This was no act of necessity by a starving individual. It was deliberate harm on a disturbing level. The sights of wounded deer, foxes, and a thin coyote with a deformed leg haunted him. This cruelty wasn't due to unenlightenment or need, but rather malice, executed with disturbing proficiency. There were no haphazard errors or overt signs. Their movements through the forest were like phantoms, leaving suffering in their wake. Then, one chilling morning, reviewing the camera footage sent a surge of anxiety through him. Two silhouettes, moving in the early morning fog, looked deliberate and focused. A shock ran through Johann as he recognized the forms. Their manner of movement was all too familiar. He zoomed in, heart racing with disbelief. Impossible, yet unmistakable, the person looking momentarily towards the lens was Richard, someone Johann would frequently see around, a man he considered a friend. Richard, known in the local community, showed a face of betrayal to Johann. As the other individual cautiously scanned their environment, revealing himself to the lens, the veil over Johann's understanding of his community, distinguishing the reputable from the disreputable, was torn apart. Betrayal ignited a fierce resolve, but anger alone wouldn't topple Richard and the influential town leader. Solid, undeniable proof was required to dismantle their guise of integrity. The significance transcended personal grievances. This was about the community's core values, the essence of justice. Johann formulated a strategy, aware of the risks. He wouldn't just confront the town leader head-on. He aimed for a public unveiling, but for that, he needed the trap, caught in the act. He charted a path, anticipating their next move. Johann adjusted his cameras based on this prediction. 2 days later, the cameras recorded them, two shadowy figures in camouflage gear. Moving with stealth, Johann followed them deeper into the woodland. In the filtered sunlight of the forest, the showdown was quick and harsh. Johann discovered the town's leader had accepted bribes from Richard and other hunters to mark areas off-limits for regular forest ranger patrols. The leader's initial surprise quickly turned into a contemptuous smirk. Unbeknownst to him, Johann had already informed the rangers. When they showed up and Johann presented the evidence, the leader's face showed not a hint of regret, only a strategic thought on how to lessen the repercussions. Richard, on the other hand, was unable to meet Johann's gaze, feeling guilty for his actions and the avarice that drove them. A week later, the town's leader lost his position and his esteem. He was apprehended and now faced the stark reality of accountability. The revelation sent tremors through the community, yet amidst the turmoil, Johann was certain he had acted righteously. He had targeted a new adversary, duplicity, and he was determined to uncover those who misused their authority and exploited nature, regardless of the sacrifices involved. He reflected, with a sense of irony, that an encounter with a trapped and wounded bear had awakened him to this mission. It's often those we hold in high regard who, away from watchful eyes, inflict untold harm on the environment and the harmonious living of our communities. Are you aware of similar incidents? Making the ethical decision can be challenging, especially under dire circumstances. Would you have taken the same steps as Johan? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to like, share, and ring the notification bell for more amazing stories. We'll see you in the next video.